Set up. Top Republican just noticed something sick about visa of Russian lawyer who met Don Jr. Isn't it amazing these alleged new hounds at the big paper will search all day for the tiniest Trump story, but somehow they manage to miss something unthinkable like this? Remember how Donald Trump Jr. met with a Russian lawyer who promised dirt on Hillary Clinton? You know, Miss Natalia Veselnitskaya. Well, Senator Chuck Grassley just noticed something sick about her visa at the time of their meeting. Her visa to be in the U.S. had expired nearly 6 months before the meeting, and she had been denied an extension. So as head of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, Grassley sprung into action and immediately notified both Secretary of Homeland Security, John Kelly, and Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson.
This morning, we're hearing for the first time from the Kremlin-connected lawyer who met with Donald Trump.
You know how happy she is. You know how happy she is to be reporting on this, right? You know that.
Trump Jr. last year. Joining us live from Moscow, NBC News foreign correspondent Keir Simmons. Keir, you spoke with Natalia Veselnitskaya this morning. What did she have to say?
Yeah, that's right. We just wrapped up that interview, Mika, with Natalia Veselnitskaya, and she tells a fascinating story of getting a phone call from a man she didn't know and being told to come to Trump Tower for a meeting with the Trump campaign. She says they wanted information, particularly financial information about the Clinton campaign, information she says she didn't have. This is the woman, Natalia Veselnitskaya, at the center of a storm over a meeting with Donald Trump's son in June 2016.
You wake up one morning and find you're the focus of all the high-ranking upstream media.
On June 9th, 2 weeks after Donald Trump secured the nomination, his son, Donald Trump Jr., along with Jared Kushner and former campaign chair Paul Manafort, met with the Russian attorney.
In June, you met with Donald Trump Jr., with Jared Kushner, with Paul Manafort. What was the purpose of that meeting?
I never knew who else would be attending the meeting. All I knew that Mr. Donald Trump Jr. was willing to meet with me. I could recognize the young gentleman who was only present in the meeting for probably the first 7 to 10 minutes, and then he stood up and left the room. It was Mr. Jared Kushner, and he never came back, by the way. And the other individual who was at the same meeting was always looking at his phone. He was reading something. He never took any active part in the conversation. That was Mr. Manafort.
They had the impression, it appears, that they were going to be told some information that you had about the DNC. How did they get that impression?
It's quite possible that maybe they were looking for such information. They wanted it so badly.
And this morning, she denies claims she is connected to a Russian government effort to aid Donald Trump's presidency.
Have you ever worked for the Russian government? Do you have connections to the Russian government?
No.
What she was doing, she says, was lobbying against sanctions imposed by the US on Russian individuals, sanctions that she claims are unfair. This was a long interview, Mika. We are still picking through it. We'll have more through the day.
All right. NBC's Keir Simmons, thank you very much. We look forward to hearing more about that.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. You are looking forward. Why was she still here on an expired visa? Who approved her to come to the U.S.? She claims she was contacted by a mysterious man who arranged the meeting. Who accepts meetings from anonymous people? Nobody, because you'd fear for your life. The whole thing reeks, and we already have proof that Hillary Clinton was pulling all kinds of strings to sabotage the election. It is really impossible to think that maybe Obama let this one slide. Trump Jr.'s interview on Hannity about the meeting with Russian
Donald Trump Jr. We will ask him every single question I can think of on this topic. Don Jr., good to see you. Welcome back. Here. Appreciate it.
I didn't know there was any time left.
I've been told that before, but they're highly rated opening monologues.
I like it.
And I figured while I have a captive audience, I wanted to get my points out to them. Let's start with the emails.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first email. First of all, let's talk about who is Rob Goldstone.
Rob Goldstone is a talent manager for Emin Argalov, who's a Azerbaijani Russian singer, performed at Miss Universe and later performed at the WGC Championship golf course tournament that we held at Doral.
All right, so do you know...
I met him through the golf course. I wasn't even at the Miss Universe pageant, but I met him throughout there, so I had a casual relationship
with him. Okay, so he sends you this email. We'll put it back up on the screen and give you a chance to look at this. This is the one that says the Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with his father, meaning Emin's father, and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with documents, information that could incriminate Hillary Clinton, etc. Obviously highly sensitive information, but as part of Russia and its government support of Mr. Trump. And then they asked the best way to handle this. This email comes in. What are you thinking?
Honestly, my takeaway when all of this was going on is that someone has information on our opponent. You know, things are going a million miles an hour. You know what it's like to be on a campaign. We just won Indiana, but we're talking about a contested convention. Things are going a million miles an hour again. And, hey, wait a minute. I've heard about all these things, but maybe this is something. I should hear them out.
Okay. When you read the parts about the Russian government or Russia supporting your father, did that put off any sirens in your head?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think this was, again, just basic information that was going to be possibly there. I didn't know these guys well enough to understand that if this talent manager from Miss Universe, you know, had this kind of thing. So I wanted to hear him out and play it out and see what happens. But, you know, people are trying to reach out to you all the time with this.
All right, so you spent a lot of time talking about it, and you actually said at one point that, hey, if it turns out to say what you say it is,
Of course.
what did you think it might be?
Listen, I've been reading about scandals that people were probably underreporting for a long time, so maybe it was something that had to do with one of those things. I mean, this is her, perhaps, involvement with the Russian government. So, you know, again, I didn't know there was any credibility. I didn't know there was anything behind it. I can't vouch for the information. Now, someone sent me an email. I can't help what someone sends me. You know, I read it, I responded accordingly, and if there was something interesting there, I think it's pretty common.
What about the timeline of this? This is pre, for example, WikiLeaks and the
honestly,
emails.
This is pre, like, Russia fever. This is pre-Russia mania. You know, this is 13 months ago, before I think the rest of the world was talking about that, trying to build up this narrative about Russia. So I don't even think my sirens, you know, went up, or the antennas went up at this time because of it, because it wasn't the issue that it's been made out to be over the last, you know, 9 months, 10 months, since it really became a thing. So I think there is an element of context to that. At the time, it wasn't this big news story.
All right. What did you know about Emin's father? What did you know about them from Moscow? Was it just the pageant you met them at?
They had the pageant, and they're successful real estate developers over there. So, you know, that's the extent of, you know, my knowledge with them. I've met Emin once or twice, and, you know, maintained a casual relationship there. Talked about some potential deals, and then to that the extent of it, they really didn't go anywhere.
What do you know about this Russian lawyer? What did you at the time, if anything, know?
I actually didn't know anything about it. Again, an acquaintance, you know, sent me this email as a courtesy to him. I said, okay, let's meet. But I didn't know who I was meeting beforehand, never heard of the person, never got the information until they were in the room.
At any point were you told, either in phone conversation or otherwise, what they might tell you, what Goldstone seemed to be implying you would receive?
No, as I recall, it was all basically this email coordination. Let's try to set up a meeting and see what happens, and that it was going to be interesting information. And, you know, in the end, it wasn't about that at all.
Let's go into the meeting. All right, so you meet at Trump Tower.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting was described earlier today on the Today Show. Did she describe it accurately?
I think fairly accurately. I mean, I was a little taken back by her saying, you know, talking about me pressing for the information, but as you can see from the emails, the pretext of the meeting was, hey, we have information, and there was, you know, some small talks. I don't even remember what it was. It just was sort of nonsensical, inane and garbled, and then quickly went on to, you know, a story about Russian adoption and how we could possibly help, and really that's where we shut down, which is, wait a second, what does this have to do with...
Did you even know what the McGinty Act was?
I'd never even heard of it before, you know, that day. You know, I think it became pretty apparent to, you know, Jared and Paul, who I think Jared left after a few minutes, Paul got
Well,
his
she
phone.
said that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
You
where
remember
I do remember that. Yeah, we were all there. I was basically sitting there listening as a courtesy to my acquaintance who had set up the meeting, and you know, in his own words, you can hear what he said, and you played it earlier about it. I mean, he apologized to me walking out of the meeting, basically for wasting my time.
Well, and he did say at the end of your statement today, you did point out, as Goldstone said today, the entire meeting was the most inane nonsense I've ever heard, and I'm actually, you know, agitated by it.
Yeah, listen.
And he called and apologized to you?
No, there wasn't really follow-up because there's nothing there to follow up. You know, but as we were walking out, he said, listen, I'm sorry for that. But I think what happened, he sort of goosed up. He built up. There was some puffery to the email, perhaps, to get the meeting, to make it happen. And, you know, in the end, there was probably some bait and switch about what it was really supposed to be about. And so, you know, there is nothing there.
So she is saying that she had no information to provide. Do you remember when she suggested that you were pressing her a little bit for information?
Well, I imagine I did. I mean, I was probably pressing because the pretext of the meeting was, hey, I have information about your opponent. It was this, you know, hey, some DNC donors may have done something in Russia and they didn't pay taxes. I was like, what does this have to do with anything? You know, especially in light of everything that was out there. I was like, this isn't...
Did you ever have any contact with this woman again?
No.
Did you ever have any contact with Goldstone again?
Casual, hey, how's it going? Emin's going to be in town performing, something like that. But
did you ever see Emin again? Except the...
I don't believe so, no.
I
don't think I've seen Emin since this transpired.
Okay, so this is a hypothetical. In any point in your mind, did Don Jr. have a siren saying, okay, they're talking, again, I go back to the first email about Russia, Russian government, I'm meeting with this person, you're going to talk on the phone. Did you ever think, oh, maybe this might not be...
Listen, I think, like I said, in retrospect, I probably would have done things a little differently. Again, this is before the Russia mania. This is before they were building it up in the press. For me, this was opposition research. They had something, you know, maybe concrete evidence to all the stories I'd been hearing about, but they were probably underreported for, you know, years, not just during the campaign. So I think I wanted to hear it out. But really, it went nowhere, and it was apparent that that wasn't what the meeting was actually about.
Okay, let me ask a hypothetical. I know hypotheticals, maybe you've thought about it since, and since this has now become Russia collusion, and etc. Did you ever meet with any other person from Russia that you know?
You know, I don't even know. I've probably met with other people from Russia.
I mean,
certainly not in the context of a formalized meeting or anything like that, because why would I? You know, in the grand scheme of things, how busy we were, it was much more important to doing this. This was a courtesy to an acquaintance.
Let me play a montage, and these are Democrats attacking you today, and give you a chance to respond to what they're saying and what the left is saying. I mean, they've taken it to the ultimate extreme. And then I'll ask you about some perspective about some of my comments at the beginning of the show. Here's what they're saying.
We now know that through intermediaries, the Russian government sought to approach the Trump campaign to see whether they would be interested in damaging information about Hillary Clinton. We now know that the response that the president's son gave to the Russians was that he would love it if they would provide damaging information about Hillary Clinton. Rather than report this overture by the Russian government to provide damaging information to intervene in the presidential election in a way to help his father, neither the president's son nor the campaign reported this information to the FBI.
We get this email exchange today showing clear collaboration between the Russian government and Russian government agents and the Trump campaign at the highest levels, where the email is very clear that the Russian government is weighing in to help elect Donald Trump.
We need Donald Trump Jr. and other campaign associates to turn over any and all documents and electronic communications that investigators asked for. And we need public testimony under oath of Donald Trump Jr., who has changed his story repeatedly.
We're now beyond obstruction of justice in terms of what's being investigated. This is moving into perjury, false statements, and even potentially treason.
What about Hillary?
Did you hand over any and all documents?
Well, I will. I've said it publicly. I said it yesterday. More than happy to cooperate with everyone. I just want the truth to get out there. And that's part of why I released all this stuff today. I wanted to get it all out there. They're trying to drag out the story, in all fairness. You know, they have it. They want to drip a little bit today, drip a little bit then. So I was like, here it is. I'm more than happy to be transparent about it, and I'm more than happy to cooperate with everyone.
So as far as you know, as far as this incident is concerned, this is all of it?
This is everything. This is everything.
Was anybody else at any point in the campaign said, oh, I got information about Hillary that you remember?
No.
Let me go back to what Tim Kaine said. Well, if it is what you said here, and especially, you know, you'd want it released later in the summer. I think that's unusual for a campaign to want op research, and I'll get to the Ukrainian issue, which I think has been underreported, especially in light of this coverage, but...
like I said, I think we had more important things to worry about. I wasn't sure of the credibility of any of this stuff. At the time, I'm sitting there, Indiana had just probably happened. You know, I'm worried about hearing a contested convention. So, you know, we're going to fight. This is the first time we've ever done any of this. This was, you know, I'm still way in the learning curve on all of this. So it wasn't that urgent to me if I'm saying, hey, it can wait till the end of summer. But, yeah, obviously you want to hear the information. I mean, that's what we do in business. If there's information out there, you want it, and then you make what you do with it. If there was something that came from it that was shady, if it was a danger to national security, I would obviously bring it right to someone. But I didn't know what anything was. It turns out it was nothing. And therefore, there's nothing to be able to actually talk about.
The whole contact took how long? How long was the meeting?
20 minutes or so.
About 20 minutes. And Jared left after 5 or 10?
Yes.
Like she said, and Paul Manafort was on his
phone.
The whole time?
Pretty much. Listen, like I said, it became pretty apparent that this was not what we were in there talking about.
A lot of people are going to want to know this about your father. Mm-hmm. Did you tell your father anything about this?
No. It was such a nothing. There was nothing to tell. I mean, I wouldn't have even remembered it until you start scouring through the stuff. It was literally just a wasted 20 minutes, which was a shame.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll have more.
Why don't they go after Hillary? That's what I'd like to know. And you see that little snot nose Tim McCain? Chuck Grassley may have just opened a Pandora's box of deep state conspiracies, but this is something every American needs to be aware of. Help get the word out by sharing this to everyone you know. Absolutely, this is now, like, they're grasping at straws. They're grasping at straws. Notice the demon Democrats are out there, like making something out of nothing again, wasting taxpayer money again, wasting time on getting more important things done. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching.